Hello everyone, I am Umesh. This is the fourth video in the series where I am trying to bridge the gap between current education system and what is the things required in current software industries, thereby improving the employability of current students. Okay, this is the whole objective of the video series, and in this video I am going to talk about the web application framework and languages. Okay, so in your academic curriculum you come across huge number of languages. Okay, and you may start to think which one is good for creating app, which one is good for doing stuffs, etc. So let me tell you that no single language is good for everything. Okay, each language has their own advantages and disadvantages, and each language is used for a different purpose. Okay, and let me tell you another one thing is that almost no one creates a web application from scratch. Okay, so from scratch means only by using language. Okay, so everyone creates the web application or the web services or the Android app by using framework and the libraries. Okay, so no one creates the application from scratch. They use the frameworks that is already built, open source framework, or some companies have their own framework they created in their own company. Okay, so some companies do not use the open source framework for application building, the frameworks that are already available, but instead they use their own inbuilt in-house developed framework. Okay. And there are huge amounts of open source libraries available, so companies directly make use of available frameworks and libraries to create their web application, and it is very good thing. Okay, take an example. Okay, if you want to create a sandwich, so what you will do, it is huge better to go to the shop and buy a slice of a bread instead of baking a bread, breaking a bread, slicing a bread, and then bringing it and then making sandwich out of it. It will get hugely time consuming. So best way is to go to the shop and buy a bread. So breads are like the frameworks for building web application. Yes, you can build web application by using the scratch language only, but it's hugely troublesome and it may take lots of time, and you may not create the as awesome application as these frameworks will build for you. So first we will talk about the languages that you come across your academic session. C, C++, Java, C#. C# is the language. C#.NET is a framework. C#, VB, Ruby, Python, C, CSS, HTML, JavaScript, and many languages. So when you come across these languages in your academic, okay, so learn those languages, have a good knowledge of those languages, and start working on it directly. Okay, do not wait for your knowledge of those languages gets perfect. Okay, it will not get perfect unless and until you start working on it. Okay. So I completely believe in learn by doing. So unfortunately I see here the many students start mugging the basic concepts of the languages. By doing that it gets very boring. You will lose the fun of learning. So you must not do that. The only thing to learn, the only best way to learn any language is by using it. Okay, and the best way of using the language is to create what you want to create. In short, working on the project. So for example, in this semester you have a Java as a major languages, so start working on one of the Java framework and start building website out of it. You must not wait for the final year to work on the project. In each semester you should have one project and you should work on that project and build one awesome app. It is the must to do. So don't wait for your basics of Java to get strengthened and only then to start building an app. It is a wastage of time. As soon as you have a okay knowledge or good knowledge of Java, start working on get a framework and start building a web application. As soon as you have a good knowledge of C#, get a framework and start building a web application. As soon as you have a good knowledge of Python, get a framework and start building a web application, web services, REST API, or anything you want to build. Okay, as soon as you have a good knowledge of it, you must start building something out of it. Okay, through which you will get a better knowledge of your basics, and your technicals will get stronger automatically. You does not need to mug the things, you does not need to remember the things, you does not need to do anything. Just have a basic knowledge of Java. Okay. So it doesn't matter if you if you don't know something, Google it. Okay. So for example, if you come across a exception, and for example null pointer exception in case of Java, that's it. Search on it and get a help. Best way to get a help is Stack Overflow. Okay, I highly recommend this. Stack Overflow is the best way to ask the question and get answer of the question. Okay, I highly recommend this Stack Overflow. I also have account on it. I have also posted some questions and answered many questions. So this is the best way. If you come across while using some frameworks, if you come across some errors, some issues, you can directly post the question or first initially search the question on the Stack Overflow. Many people may have come across the same question or same issue that you already came. You can search those issue and get answer out of it through the Stack Overflow. So don't wait for your basic language knowledge to get strengthened. Start building application. All the basics, basic concept, basic knowledge will get strengthened automatically. So as I have already told you, once you have a okay knowledge of Java in your academic, you must start working on the project. Okay, and when you start working on the project, you should work on the project with a framework. Okay, you must not work on the project without a framework. Okay, so nowadays everyone uses framework. Some may use their in-house frameworks, but most of the people use the open source frameworks that are already available in the market. When you work on the project, always work with the industry standards. Okay, this is what we are going to tell you. We will tell you about the how industry works on the project, how industry, which are the tools, frameworks, libraries that industry most probably use for the project, and we will tell you about the details so that in your academic session only you start working on it. So understanding open source libraries and framework, as I have already told you about the sandwich, it's smart frameworks and the open source libraries are the pre-sliced bread for you. It will make your task easy, very easy. Okay. So like I told you, no one uses the language from the scratch. They use the framework. Frameworks are like jetpacks for development languages. They boost performance, extend capabilities, and offer libraries of coding shortcuts. So developers aren't hand coding web application from ground up. Frameworks aren't just bundled snippet of code. They offer features like models, APIs, and other elements to streamline development of dynamic, rich web application. Here are the some basic core feature of web application framework. So each programming language has at least one universal reusable framework. Okay. So there are at least one framework built around one programming language. Okay. So we will know which framework is good for which, and which framework you should learn to increase your employability. Okay. So the libraries within each framework offers reusable bundles. Okay, libraries means these are the already created functions for you, so that you does not need to recreate those functions. You directly use those functions in your web application. For example, you want to solve the equation, or you want to calculate the point of intersection of two lines. So for that you need to create a matrix out of the line equation and then solve the matrix. And for solving the matrix, there are already available optimized libraries for solving the matrix. You must not invest your time to create an function about solving the matrix. You should directly, while only for creating web application, you should directly use those functions and create a web application out of it. So this is what the open source libraries and web frameworks do for you. Okay, so these are the things handled by the frameworks. Okay, framework has the libraries. They use reusable bits of low level code in the each languages. For example, Ruby on the Rails, Gems is the libraries. So the framework provides the APIs to access the database. Also the scaffolding, Ajax, you will come to know about these things when we learn, get to know overview of each framework. Okay, framework also handles caching and security. Security is a very important part, and frameworks, some frameworks provides inbuilt security in themselves. Okay, same also frameworks comes with the compilers frameworks also has the libraries for handling the logs and many other things, lots of things. Okay, in short, as soon as you have a good knowledge of a programming language, you should start working on it by using a framework and start creating the web application. You should use the framework with the industry standards and make yourself more employable to the industry. Okay. So I am going to talk about the types of web application framework. So there are generally web application framework can be categorized with the architecture they are built on, but it is generalized way of categorizing web application framework is how they handle their coding part. Okay. So the frameworks where application logic is on the server side are called backend frameworks. During an web 1.0 era, okay, web 1.0 era means generally 8 to 10 years ago, when there were the web application, all the web application were built around servers. Okay. So these applications where the application logic is always on the server side. So this type of server are very good. They are very secure, highly secure, since their entire app logic is stored in the backend. So whatever you do, anything you do in the front end, a request is sent to the backend to perform any operation or to get the data, and once that request is done, you will get a response. Okay, this is the way of how the web 1.0 era worked. It only employed backend server. But nowadays, if you see that nowadays the web apps become more responsive, because the more and more application logic is deployed in the front end. Okay, so the browser runs huge amount of application logic itself. So the inside the browser itself, there are huge amounts of JavaScript files that runs and they manipulate the data, and they change the UI without connecting to the backend. So nowadays, what we call a modern web application are combination of a front end framework and the backend framework. So by using the combination of these two, the new modern applications are being developed. But still, the only backend application framework is also sufficient to create any web application. But the problem with the backend web application is that for each click you have to send the request to the server. So each click you perform on the browser and request is sent to the server, and this is actually very good for secured things like banking, finance and insurance companies. So BFSI is banking, finance and insurance sector, which is a very huge sector, and most of the project that have to the companies Wipro, Infosys, TCS, these companies have project in BSF. Most of the project are BFSI domain, banking, finance and insurance domain. So this domain needs huge amount of security. So generally these domains employ backend server. Most of the time these projects uses backend server for their web application. But nowadays the modern applications that we see uses the combination of backend framework and the front end framework. So we have two groups of web application framework. One helps to set up app logic on the server and the other on the client. To create a powerful web app, you can use both of them simultaneously. So it's same thing I have discussed earlier. Okay, so you should have knowledge of a web framework to build and a web application, so it will be easy for you. So generally web development platform for both front end and back end, it consists of of course framework. Okay, so I'm talking about the complete development platform. It includes everything. So it includes the framework generally, and it includes the testing tool, build tool also. It includes the package manager, version control system, application log process, documentation process and IDE tool. So all these things are needed to create a web application, and you should have knowledge of each of these. Okay, so because everything is used in the software industry. So in short, when you create a project in your academic, you should employ all of these things while creating your web application. So I will talk about these things with an example. So take an Java example. So here Java is the language, okay, and Spring Boot framework is the framework, this part framework. Maven is the project management and build automation and dependency management tool. So the package manager, build tool, so package manager and build tool is Maven here, okay. JUnit for unit testing, the testing tool is JUnit. Git for version control system, so this is the Git, and Eclipse as the IDE, okay. So documentation process, some libraries are used for the documentation and application log. So log4j is generally used for the logging, and documentation process, some other application is some other libraries are used, okay. So this is the way, this is the combination. So when you start working on the Java project, you should work with these combined tools, combination of these tools and the libraries. When you work with that, then it can be called your project as a industry standard project. If you miss version control system while building your application, or if you miss a Maven while building your application, it cannot be called industry standard application, because version control system is must while building any web application. Maven or Ant, some application uses Ant, some uses Maven for build tool in Java application. So you must have some framework. The Spring is the most widely used framework for Java, okay, and Eclipse is the most widely used IDE. You can use IntelliJ also. It doesn't matter what you use here, but it should have these things. So if you want to start a project, that project must include all these things. Only then that project can be called as industry standard project. Take an example of Angular 2. So Angular 2 is of course a front end web application framework, okay. So it this framework runs on the browser side, okay. Browser side means client side. Client side means app logic is somewhat stored in the browser side, okay. So the Angular CLI for the build, Angular CLI is used for the building. Node.js with the NPM for dependency and package management. Karma for the unit test running. Jasmine for the unit test. Git for the version control system, and Visual Studio Code as IDE. So you can see that all these tools, libraries and framework that I have told you are just these: package manager, testing tool, build tool, framework, version control system, application log, documentation process, IDE tool. So all these things needed to have in your application so that it can become a industry standard application. It is the way how the application is built in the industry. Don't worry of this if you don't know much in detail. We will talk each of these in the dedicated session, okay. We will be having one session for the version control system, we will be having one session for the Spring Boot framework, one session for the Maven, okay. So don't worry about this, okay. That's it for this video. In the next video I will talk about the details of backend web application framework, and what are the different backend web application framework built around these languages, okay. The framework are built around some of these languages, and which are the backend web application framework most used, which are used in the BFSI domain, banking and finance domain, which is generally these domains have a huge amount of employment in our software industry in India. So the some frameworks are very good for BFSI domain, some backend frameworks are very good for the startup, because you can build your application very quickly using some framework, and some framework are famous for the security. So there are the different advantages of using the framework. No one framework is good for everything. So I will tell you about details of backend framework in the next video.